On this week's Booth Review, there are no moral victories.
Hopefully the defense will have a better day, but that Ravens offense, London, might be the best that Washington sees all year.
And we'll take a look ahead of this week's game against the Carolina Panthers and why this is a bigger game than yesterday against the Baltimore Ravens.
It's all coming up on the Booth Review. Welcome to this week's edition of the Booth Review podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein with one of the greatest linebackers of all time, London Fletcher. This is weird, London. It's been a month. We had lost, so we're doing a review of a game the Commanders actually lost this week to a very good Baltimore Ravens team.
No, it's definitely a feeling of like, man, are we really at this point? We got that winning thing, man. I got used to that. I don't know about you, but it feels good to win, but obviously, that wasn't the case yesterday. On my flight back home to Charlotte, I was just kind of reflecting on the game and where we are at as a team, as a franchise, as a kind of fan base. And I'm actually still optimistic about where we are. And, you know, we'll get into the Ravens and what we think about them, but it definitely is not the thing, the money that we've grown accustomed to over the last month.
Yeah, well, I want to start with this. I mean, because we don't know what's going on with John or Dorrance. You played in, 256 consecutive games? I wonder if you're going to get a call from DQ this week because we took a couple injuries. Who knows? Yeah.
So hold on, Bram. All right. So you mentioned Dorrance Armstrong and Jonathan Allen, two defensive linemen that are injured. Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu, they're healthy. So you think, I know I put on some weight, so you want me to go put my hands in the dirt? Is that what you're saying?
It was not a fat joke. No, it really wasn't. It was actually trying to be complimentary of you and make a snarky joke that's not going to happen. So,
So my buddies, my former teammates that were there that I played with, Fred Smoot, some of the other guys I played with, they would have took that as a Fletch. We need a couple D linemen. Can you suit up? That's all right. Yeah,
I'm hoping, as we're taping this, we don't know what the situation is with John or Dort, so hopefully we'll get some good news on both of their injuries as we move forward into the Carolina game this week. All right, let's focus back in on the Ravens game a little bit, where, listen, this is a team that's been in the playoffs 5 of the last 6 years, 17 of the last 25. They are very stable. They've had same front office structure for a very long time. Harbaugh's second longest tenured coach, 17th year, same owner for a long time. They have a unicorn quarterback. Like, I think you know what you get with a team like that, and therefore I think why this felt like such a big game yesterday. So I want to go spin zone a little bit here because I got to be honest with you. Like, I follow, what the media is going to say about the team afterwards, and they could have focused on a couple of things, and they seem to have focused more that Washington went toe-to-toe with them, were in a one-score game, saw the quarterback go toe-to-toe with an MVP quarterback, and decided not to overly focus on 484 yards given up. So I think both of these things are true, but to your point, I think people remain very optimistic that they saw what 5 in the offense can do and went toe-to-toe in a place where not a lot of teams win, frankly.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. When the schedule first came out and you saw where we are as a recalibration, whatever you want to call it, new ownership, new general, new front office, new head coach, over 50% of the roster completely turned over, and you saw the Ravens on the schedule. You're like, where they've been. They were the number 1 seed in the AFC a year ago. We won 3 games last year, 4 games. I can't even remember. It was I tried to wipe that out of my memory bank. Yeah. But you saw that on the schedule, and you're like, okay, can we go in there, kind of be a little bit competitive? This is prior to the season and the way guys have played recently and going on that 4-game winning streak. You're like, okay, Baltimore's they're up here on paper, we're down here. But then after you go in there, you see it end up being just a 1-score game. You feel pretty good about where we are right now. But I think you also have to look and say, we still need there's a lot more room for improvement. I think Coach Quinn will say that with the guys. There'll be some things that he takes away from the football game. We're like, man, I really like this. Love the way we competed. Love the way we did this. Love the way we did that. But these are some areas where we definitely need to improve, to get to where we're at the point where the Ravens are as a perennial Super Bowl contender, a team that can represent the NFC in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I think largely like they were a good litmus test. I didn't like measuring stick. I thought we're just kind of too early in this process to use terminology, and I don't think the team liked that either. But I thought litmus test of where this is through 5 games, because I thought Dan Quinn was very honest about it last Friday. It was like the good elephant in the room. This is happening faster than you thought it would, right? And he kind of acknowledged, it's all new, all these new players. We are trying to instill a new culture. We do think we have a special player at quarterback, but, it's baked in that it's going to take some time. It's the NFL, and it seemed to be coming along at a really expedited pace, which was really good. And that's why we landed on this game where you go, 4 of the first 6 are on the road. This is the hardest one of all of them because this is a team that's been there, done that, and looks like the type of team that at least on one side of the ball could compete for a championship again. Let's find out where they are. And I think in the end, when you look at the scoreboard and you go 30-23, it feels like it was momentum. But, and I assume you kind of feel the same way, but what Dan said to us, Coach Quinn said to us in the post-game press conference, in the interview we did with him, and even what he said in the press conference was, there were parts of this, and this I thought was honest and acknowledging what happened, that was quote unquote lopsided. And he's talking about the way the Ravens were able to move the ball on him defensively. That's the number 1 offense in the league. But you're going to give up 484 yards to anybody, and it's not just running, it's not just passing. You're going to have a hard time getting to the level that the Ravens are at.
Yeah, so when you look at the Ravens' last 6 possessions, touchdown, field goal, end of game where they were driving and they ran out the clock. I rewatched the game this morning a little bit, watched the defensive side, and because that was the side that I wanted to focus on first and foremost and see, okay, where were the breakdowns? Where were the things that we need to do better? First and foremost, I thought there were some communication errors that happened in that ball game that we hadn't seen during that 4-game winning streak, and there was some confusion on a couple different plays from a passing game standpoint. The Ravens they got good football players. Zay Flowers is a problem. They're going to win their fair share of matchups. But the part where I think Joe Witt will kind of be really disappointed is some of the miscommunications. There were a couple coverage busts where those things we kind of felt like, and I'm sure they felt like we're behind them. If you go back to the Tampa Bay game, the first game of the season, there were some issues like that kind of crept back up in this game from a coverage standpoint. They'll probably do some things, from a technique standpoint that you could have played this a little bit different from a technique standpoint, giving yourself a better chance to win that down from a coverage standpoint. There were some gap fit issues in the running game where, guys didn't necessarily stay in their responsibilities, and they got some runs that hurt us in that ball game. And Derrick Henry's a monster, but you can't help him by not being where you need to be. So when you look at that and you say, are these places where we need different personnel? Is this an off-season issue, or is this just, hey, guys, we still are in the midst of the season, and these are things that we can get corrected right now? I say yes. Looking at that film, the communication errors, the kind of lapses or technique deals, you can get those corrected right now. And guys saying and playing in their correct responsibility when it comes to stopping a run, those are things that can be corrected right now during this season. So when you look at the film, and they call it Tell the Truth Monday or whatever, when you tell the truth Monday, those are the things that they're going to talk about in that meeting room.
I want to talk about the Flowers matchup for a moment, because he had obviously a huge first half. And if you're going in and you're facing the Ravens, you've got to try to limit their run game. I mean, they came in averaging 211 yards a game in the modern NFL on the ground. That's stupid. It's an absurd number. It really is. In the modern, with teams throwing the ball so much, it's an absurd number to have that. So they have this kind of unstoppable part of their offense. The one thing the Washington defense did really well yesterday was they limited Lamar on the ground. He was 11 for 40, something like that. So they limited him. Big day through the air, though. And you could tell early Washington was committed to trying to at least slow down the Ravens' run. And the numbers were there. But in the end, when asked to go out and get matched up with those receivers, they couldn't really handle it. There were 5 receivers for the Ravens that had at least 13 yards per catch. 5. Like, that means everybody's getting chunk plays off of them. And the Flowers one, I remember talking to you pregame, talking to Logan about it, and I said, like, Mike Sainristil down the road is probably their slot corner. This is a unique person that they're facing. They haven't seen a lot of teams that have a receiver like this. Flowers as this kind of movable part who can go inside, outside, quick cut, quick explosion player. I remember looking at you going, who are they covering him with? And he ended up having a massive first half against them because I think Washington was dedicated to try to slow down the run, and the Ravens responded. I give them credit. They responded and found very good matchups, and Flowers, I believe, is he may not be perceived as a top 5, top 10 receiver, but at what he does for them, he's a very difficult matchup, and he was for Washington yesterday.
No, he was. He had the big play in their opening drive with on the screenplay, the wide receiver rocket screen, where they caught us in a blitz, and it's a perfect call for them against a defense where we're bringing the pressure off that edge, so that got them going early in that ball game. But from a standpoint of when I talk about watching the film, tell the truth, there were some times, and again, I don't know exactly what being coached, but just from a lot of his routes were in breaking routes that were across the field against coverage. And oftentimes the corners, they have outside leverage because of, you may have a post safety, things like that. But maybe you may want to shade a little bit inside on this type of route especially with the split that this guy has and his speed. And, if we're gonna give up something, force them to beat us on the outside or out breaking route, things like that. So that may be something that they're talking about in their film room. The pass rush wasn't what it needed to be either. So there was a times where Lamar had an opportunity to go through his progressions, had a lot of time to find his open receivers. Part of that was off of play action. Again, you're geared up to stop Derrick Henry in that running game. So there was some open windows there. I look at it as, and it wasn't just Sainristil. He wasn't covering him, complete. He didn't shadow him anything. They had some different guys covering him, mainly Igbinoghene and Sainristil. So, it's hats off to the Ravens. Zay Flowers did a nice job, and they executed a game plan, to almost a T.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. Back in week 2, after week 1 with the Giants, I watched Wan'Dale Robinson, who I don't think is quite as talented, quick, whatever, like Zay Flowers is, but I watched him, and they were dumping it off to him a million times, and he's kind of that guy in the slot who's got some quickness, and I thought for sure the Giants would try to take advantage of it. And when they didn't, I was actually surprised that they went neighbors, because I think that is somewhat of an advantage. I don't think Robinson is of Flowers' level. Flowers is a unique player for them, especially in an offense where every defense has to load up against the run. You have no choice. You're going to get favorable matchups with him. And in Washington's case, I said to you pregame, I'm like, I don't know who's covering him. I think it's going to be a very difficult spot. Then they had to shift, at halftime because the passing game was getting them. And at that point, you're playing from behind against them. It's a death sentence against them. It's like trying to stop a Mack truck, and over and over, they're just battering you with Henry, Lamar, Justice Hill on the edge, and their run game is dominant.
No, you're absolutely right. When you got one leak and then you're trying to put that out, then you got another leak. So you go into the game knowing our focus is on stopping the run, stopping Derrick Henry, stopping Lamar Jackson. We can't allow these guys to just, as you mentioned, just bulldoze us or run us over in the Mack truck from a running game. To their credit, they went a lot of play action pass on first down.
Yes,
getting some chunk plays. Again, was the technique exactly the way you wanted to be played? Those are things that the coaches will talk about. Could you have done something different? Could you maybe gotten to the face of of the receivers, try to disrupt them a little bit, things like that.
All right, let me get to the other side of the ball with you for a minute, because this also was semi-predictable for Washington, and I actually think it's the good thing, in my opinion, that really came out of this. So B-Rob's out. I want to get to his impact in a little bit later, but Washington has been essentially a 50-50 run team. Well, they're coming in against the team that has the, at least metrically, best rush defense in the NFL. I think that's a little skewed because teams are typically playing from behind against Baltimore. So they're throwing a lot more in the second half. So the rush numbers are a little bit off, but still, I don't want to take anything away from them. They came in with this. B-Rob's out. And I think we could both agree, everybody knew we had to score 30 to win. So this was going to be the first game where I think they walked in knowing that Jaden's throwing 30 to 40 passes. So we were going to be a pass-heavy offense no matter what. And honestly, they passed that test. Like, we didn't know. This year is, to me, all about set the culture, find out where your roster is, try to develop Jaden Daniels, which is clearly ahead of the curve. And then each week, you're going to have a different challenge. And this challenge this week was different than anything they had faced. They knew they were going to have to throw the ball a lot this weekend to have a chance to win. And we haven't seen them do that yet, where they had to rely on throwing the ball a lot. And honestly, in the end, that's the one I take away from this and go, I feel really good that forced into that situation to have to win this way, I think they're capable of it. And that's what I really liked about the game the other day.
Yeah, no, you're right. And when you look at, you mentioned the Ravens defense, that top billing as being the number one rush defense in the National Football League, it is earned. I know I look at yards per rush, and going into that ball game, the Ravens were allowing only 3 yards per carry. You want to be at about 3 yards or less. Actually, you want to be maybe about 3.3 yards per carry allowed rush attempt. And that's a really good run defense. They're at 3 yards per carry. We had 18 carries for 52 yards.
Yeah.
They allowed 2.9 yards per carry against us. That top billing as a rush defense is earned. Looking at their pass defense, they had some issues in defending the pass. They've given up a lot of plays in the passing game. They've had some blown coverages, some miscommunications, they missed some guys that are no longer on that team from a year ago that left via free agency. They weren't playing the type of pass defense that the Ravens are accustomed to playing. They were number one in sacks a year ago. So they did that. They took the football away. They're not that type of defense currently when it comes to defending the pass.
Yeah.
And we had to rely on the passing game. And, you would have loved to have B-Rob in that game. And we would definitely have had more than 18 rushing attempts if he was in that game. But the way to go against the Ravens is through the air right now. Yeah,
I'll revisit B-Rob in a bit because when we talk about him specifically, I want to get into him. But on the passing game, like going in, what I saw from the Ravens was they don't get a lot of pressure just rushing four. Like they don't have the elite pass rushers on the edge. They had a little more success with it yesterday than I kind of thought they would, but they typically have to bring pressure. Kyle Hamilton's kind of a chaos agent for them. He kind of comes up to the line. You don't know where he's going to be, where he's going to be coming from, but they bring pressure, puts pressure on their secondary. And they're a little slower right now, whether that's communication or age or something on the back end. And there's big plays to be had. So even going in, knowing you got to score a lot of points, it looks like that's the vulnerability of their defense. Now you got to find out, can we do it? If asked to throw the ball 35, 40 times a game to win, can we do it? And I think Jaden and the offense answered that. They're capable of it. They look like, to this point, a more comfortable offense being this 50-50, be more physical, run the ball type of offense to try to control the clock and take a little bit of the weight off of Jaden's shoulders. But that's not every game you're going to be in. And they weren't in one of those yesterday. And that, to me, was the biggest positive coming out of this, was if the offense is asked to do this, they seemingly are very capable of it.
Yeah, very capable of it. And I was impressed with the way Jaden played in that environment, the way, got off to a kind of a little slow start from an offensive standpoint in the passing game. but thought he settled in, thought the offense settled in. I thought the tempo kind of started to affect the Ravens defense, going no huddle for a majority of the game. And you mentioned the passing game. We were able to make plays in that, make hay. The thing I'll look at it I'm going to look at it from a defensive standpoint and what it does to you. You talked about the 50-50 run pass element. Just from a defensive standpoint, when you're going against a team where you have to defend both, it always has you on your heels from a defensive standpoint, because you can't just hang your hat and say, hey, this is a run-heavy team. We stopped the run. We increase the likelihood of us winning this football game. Conversely, if this is a team that they throw the football 70% of the time, hey, we can drop 8 in the coverage. We can do all the different types of things, really just focus on taking away their passing game, force them to run the ball, kind of like a lot of teams used to play the Indianapolis Colts, where they're like, hey, we're going to make you run the football. We're going to play a lot of cover 2, force you to run the ball. Can you be patient? Things like that. And it wasn't until the Colts started to run the ball a little bit more effectively that they actually were able to get over the hump and win the Super Bowl. So those are the things that an offense like ours, the challenges that they present to a defense when you can do both, when you can run the ball effectively, and now coming off that game, showing we can also do a lot of damage through the air. So that is a great positive if like you said, if we need to air it out.
You brought the no huddle thing up. And when they showed this stat on the television broadcast yesterday, I was surprised. I mean, I know we've run a lot of no huddle and up tempo. I didn't realize the disparity was so high with Washington versus everybody else. Like coming into the game, I don't know, I didn't see the metrics from yesterday, but it was a lot, again, that they barely huddled. Like they had run 163 plays no huddle, and the next closest team had run half of that. So, right. I mean, and they've been they're the number 1 scoring offense in the league. Yeah. So I was surprised. I guess that's validation in itself. It works for them. And I think, to some degree too, that's a surprise that operates that well with a rookie quarterback, that they are operating efficiently enough that they can do something that no one else in the league is doing. And they're prolifically scoring. Even yesterday, it was there. They left points on the field. They had a field goal blocked. They had some mishaps, at other points of the game. Like there were points left on the field again.
No, absolutely. The second you mentioned the no huddle plays, the next closest team, I think that on the graphic, it was 163 plays of no huddle plays run by us. The next closest was the Chicago Bears with 81. So slightly more than double the amount of plays of no huddle plays. And again, no huddle is a weapon. It's a tool. And you don't have to necessarily snap the ball quickly. I'll speak to you from a defense standpoint. When a team goes no huddle, hurry up. It forces us to kind of streamline the calls that we're going to make from a defensive standpoint. We may not have a ton of plays in from a defensive standpoint. If we're going to run pressure, we may want to get into our look immediately. We don't want to disguise as much. So it gives the answers to the quarterback right away. Like, hey, you may see a pressure coming. You may know if it's single high safety or cover 2 or two deep type safety. You may be able to identify man versus zone. Those type of things you're able to get pre-snap. And that works to an advantage, especially that works to an advantage for any offense, especially for a young offense with a young quarterback. So that's brilliant, actually, when you think about running so many no huddle plays and huddle up type of plays, because it gives answers immediately to a young quarterback.
All right, let's pick a few more topics, and let's do this in our game that we call This or That. All right. So, all right, here we go. This or that. The defense for Washington regressed against the Ravens, or the Ravens offense is elite?
I'll say I think we regressed just a tad bit. Just
in
a tad bit. Well, let me say this. You know what? It's not. As I mentioned, the communication situations weren't what they had been prior to that. Easily correctable, we had some run fit errors, and we had some communication lapses on the from the passing game standpoint. Now the Ravens' offense is elite as well, but just a tad bit of regression. Now, what do you think?
So on the Washington defense part, I would say this for both sides of the ball, actually. I think part of the reason why they were 4-1 going into this game was they were largely the more physical team in the games that they played. Like, Jaden played really well. They did a very creative offense. They were executing with it. The defense was getting better, but they were winning the line of scrimmage, and they were the more physical team, specifically on offense. I didn't feel that yesterday. I know you rewatched it. I didn't feel that. Now, Baltimore's kind of been there, done that with this for a very long time. And this is like when Dan Quinn and Joe Witten, they talk about, this is how we get down. You're going to like how we play. We're going to be the more physical team. I didn't feel that part of it yesterday. Felt like the Ravens were the more physical team. Maybe I'm wrong about that. So I don't know if I would call that a regression, but that was just my general sense in watching the two, that the more physical team ended up winning the game. Yeah.
No, I don't feel like the Ravens were more physical than us. Like, it wasn't a physical situation that the Ravens offense just like pounded us up front. We're gashing us deep, moving our defensive linemen out of. I don't think they out physicaled us. I just think we had some communication breakdowns in the secondary, didn't cover very well, and the pass rush wasn't able to really get to him. Now, missing Dorrance Armstrong, that definitely hurt. John Allen missing the second half of that game, that hurt. So that's not a physical, physicality deal in my part. I thought we didn't communicate well, and we didn't play coverage as tightly as we needed to, and the pass rush wasn't what it needed to be.
Now, I am more on the side of this question that the Ravens offense came in as the number one offense, at least in terms of yardage. And I think that they have the unstoppable thing in the league this year, their run game. And therefore, they're going to end up top 5 or number 1 in offense. And so they are elite. Like, they have 2 Hall of Famers who carry the ball for their team. Yeah. Lamar Jackson became the second most prolific running quarterback in the history of the NFL yesterday. And by the end of this year or early next year, will surpass Michael Vick as having the most rush yards by any quarterback ever. Derrick Henry, in his first 125 games, is in the company in terms of yardage and touchdowns of only 4 other running backs ever. Emmitt Smith, Adrian Peterson, LaDainian Tomlinson, and Jim Brown. They have unicorn players that play in an offense that runs the ball really well. And I'll also say this, too. I don't know if you felt the same way. Like, I've really been very pleased with what Cliff Kingsbury has put together in terms of execution, creativity of the offense throughout the first 6 games. Like, he gets them into these very good second and manageable situations, a lot of creative plays. I'll say this for Todd Monken too. It's not that they're just handing the ball off to Derrick Henry and he's running up the middle and he gets 3-4 yards and then they go from there. They're very creative in the way that they try to start each set of downs. So I'll give them a lot of credit for being creative as well. And they're the number 1 offense for a reason. They are elite. Yeah. This is the reigning MVP. That's ridiculous that running back's on this team, frankly. Like, I think that they're like the Eagles from a couple years ago, where their rush offense was so good, so unstoppable. And in 3rd and 4th and shorts, when the Eagles are doing this tush push thing, it becomes something that you can't stop. I don't care how good you are on defense. You can't stop. That's kind of how I feel about that aspect of the Ravens offense. I defy anybody to hold them to under 100 yards rushing this year. Like, I don't think anybody will be able to do it as a team. Nobody will be able to do that against them.
You know what? You're hedging your bet. You're going out on a limb with that bet, huh? That's
100 team yards. Could you hold them to, like, even Dan Quinn said yesterday, if we kept them to about 150, that'd be good. 150, like, that's a huge game for anybody, 150 yards, but not for them.
150 was my number. I was like, yes. We hold it for 150. That was my number. Like,
who else would you say that about, though? What other team running the ball would you say, let's just hold them to 150? You wouldn't say that about anybody. That's because they're that good at it. Like, that's what it is.
You say that about the Ravens, and you hope they don't have the type of passing game that they had yesterday. That's the difference.
If Lamar hits intermediate and deep throws, you're dead. That's the point. And that's why they're elite. This is why, and this is not their show, I'll just say this to you. they're the ones that ought to, at the deadline, go get a available receiver and go over the top and lean into this. Like, the Warriors didn't need Kevin Durant when they got him, but they got him and made him that much better. They are a top target, opposite Flowers away from, in my opinion, being basically unstoppable on offense. You can't stop their run game. What if they have a number one, like, primary receiver out there? Like, you're gonna have to score 40 to beat them.
Listen, Bram, I'm a Cavaliers fan, and the fact that you said the Warriors didn't need Kevin Durant, I disagree. They needed Kevin Durant. They were not going to beat the Cavaliers without KD. Let's move on to the next this or that.
All right. We missed Brian Robinson, or the Ravens defense is just that good against the run. Where are you on that one?
We miss B-Rob. We definitely miss B-Rob because you mentioned physicality piece. And a lot of things that B-Rob does, first and foremost, it opens up a lot more. Having him on the field will open up a lot more in the passing game. And I know Jaden had a career high in passing yards yesterday with 269 yards passing. But having B-Rob on the field forces you to commit more resources, maybe an extra guy into the box to try to stop the run, which will open up things in the passing game a little bit more. Also, his ability to catch passes out of backfield and break tackles and make play yards after contact. So you miss having him on the field. Him and Austin Eckler as a dynamic 1-2 punch. And I know Jeremy McNichols, he's played well when called into duty. But B-Rob, man, he's a difference maker. He is a difference maker. So we definitely missed him.
I think their defense I think both are true here. I think their defense is very good against the run. And B-Rob not being there, I think, is a big deal. I describe it as he's kind of gas in the tank for this offense. And I agree with you. I think you honor Washington's run differently when he's actually out on the field because he is apt to get the ball 15 to 20 times a game. And I think the Ravens know that Eckler isn't going to be used like that. Like, I don't think there would be a usage where Washington gives him the ball 15 to 20 times a game. So I do think that kind of altered probably the predictability to some degree of what Washington was going to do without having B-Rob out there. But I will say this, like, it'll go back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, I think Washington knew, B-Rob or no B-Rob, they're going to have to throw the ball more this week. So, like, would it have been 35 passes and 18 rushes? Would it more have been 31 and 21? You know, like, would it have been something like that? Like a few more runs from B-Rob? I'll buy that. Like, that they would have carried the ball more with Robinson as opposed to him not being there. I still think this was a pass-heavy game plan. And so it's not to, insinuate they didn't need him or didn't want him or wouldn't have been better with him. All those things are true. I just don't know that from a game plan perspective, knowing what they had to get done, that I think it would have been more run-heavy with him out there either way, honestly.
Yeah, I'll say this. I just think here's the difference where I see. So some of them runs where you may pick up 2 yards with Eckler or McNichols, you may probably pick up 4 yards with B-Rob or 5 yards. So now
I agree.
You're in a 2nd and 5 or a 2nd and 6 or possibly a 3rd and 3 as opposed to a 3rd and 5 or things like that. So just having him, because of the bigger body, being 6'2", you talked about this on the air yesterday when Derrick Henry's so big, he just falls forward for an extra 2 or 3 yards.
You stop him and he gets 4 yards. You stop him and he gets 4 yards, and you're like, that's a good play.
So it's a similar type of situation with B-Rob. He has great body length, so he's getting an extra yard, 2 yards, 3 yards a carry just because of his forward lean, and he's a much bigger body. So now that instead of us having to convert 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6, now we're having to convert 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5 is a lot more manageable down in distance.
I mean, he's their best lead running back, pure running back inside the tackles. He's money on these short yardage downs. He's like Henry to the point of it's never going backwards. It's always getting an extra yard or two. They're better with him. Like, it's not, and it's not close. They're better with him. I just think yesterday that just the setup and for all the reasons why they were going to have to throw the ball more to keep up with Baltimore, I'm not sure that his absence is the difference here. And it's no offense to him. It's like, I just feel like they were throwing the ball a lot either way. That would, like, B-Rob or no B-Rob, they were throwing the ball a lot yesterday. No choice.
Yeah, it was going to be probably I would say it wouldn't be 60. I mean, it wouldn't be 50-50. I think it would have been 60-40.
Maybe a little closer. I agree. Because I think it was 35-18, I think is what it was. So what would it have been? 30-23, something like that? Is that what we're talking about here? Maybe.
We passed the ball. How many pass attempts we had? Yeah, 35 pass attempts. 35. 35 pass attempts and 18 runs.
Right.
And think about this, though, too. With B-Rob on the field, as I mentioned, maybe we convert some more third downs. We possess the ball a lot longer too. And the Ravens don't have the ball as much as they did, and they're not controlling the clock as much. So I'm saying we definitely miss B-Rob. I would have loved to have him in that game. Long term wise, he's too valuable to what we want to accomplish. So hopefully it's not a situation or injury that he has to miss multiple games, but he's very valuable to what we're trying to accomplish.
And like with John and Dortch, we're waiting to hear from Dan Quinn, and we'll see what his situation is moving forward. All right, one more this or that. Jayden Daniels is not at the MVP level yet. He just played an MVP yesterday, or the kid is still really balling.
it's Jason, who's our producer, Brad, he goes MVP level, a kid in 6 games into his NFL career.
I am with you on this. I didn't even want to ask you that question, but it was put on the paper in front of me. So we blame Jason for a question that I'm not even comfortable asking. But go ahead. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, he's still balling. Let's say that. He is 100%. Still balling. There were some throws in that game yesterday where he hits a couple throws on some out routes to the sideline where one was to Terry, one was to Noah Brown, where he put the ball in perfect position where only his receiver can catch the ball. The first touchdown pass to Terry, where he throws it to a spot, lets Terry run underneath the ball across the field over a safety that's waiting back there. I mean, some of the plays, the second touchdown to Terry, he could have led Terry down toward the back pylon. Actually ends up throwing a back shoulder. Again, perfect ball placement. The kid is still balling.
100%. 4th and goal from the 6 and a must throw, and he puts it in a spot where only McLaurin can make a catch.
Yes.
Like, nothing's too big for him. The spotlight's not too big for him. His instincts are just outrageous. His clutch ability is there. Nothing seems to get to him. He had like a couple errant throws and one bad one that should have been picked off. But you're nitpicking at this point when you just go, oh, he had 2 bad throws in a game. Like, okay, name the other quarterbacks who have 2 bad throws in a game. Like, he's playing extraordinarily well, ahead of the curve. I love his demeanor about everything. Yesterday, it ain't him. It's not him why they lost. But you could feel it in him that he's all about the team, that it doesn't matter what he does. He doesn't want any nice adjectives about his play when the team loses. You can feel this about him. And I think this is why they're rallying around him, why they believe in him, why Dan Kuhn was talking about that yesterday. You could feel this in the locker room. And I'll tell you what, too, I liked how it sounded in there. They lost to a good team yesterday. That team was in the AFC Championship a year ago. They're on a 4-game win streak. They've got the number 1 offense, the reigning MVP. They're better on offense, in my opinion, this year than they were a year ago. And that's saying something. There's no shame in losing to a team like that. But they didn't want to hear about moral victories. They were disappointed. No. They know they can go toe-to-toe with them. They know they can be better on the defensive side of the ball. And I liked hearing it. The vibes matter to me. And I liked hearing what they had to say out of that locker room where they're like, don't tell us we played the Ravens close. We don't want to hear that right now. I liked that.
Everybody wants to hear that. And again, I've had the chance to rewatch the game. You haven't yet. We didn't play our best football, offensively or defensively. So we play our best football, maybe it's a different result. And we're not talking about we went toe-to-toe with the Ravens. We're talking about we beat the Ravens. And I don't think I'm, this hyperbole or anything like that. Like, we play our best football. If we play, and some of it, you say, well, the Ravens forced us to play the way we played. Did they really? It's just my opinion. This is my opinion. And I can see why they're like, hey, we're not happy with the moral victory, because they know they can play better. They know from an offensive execution, from a defensive execution, we can be a lot better than what we were yesterday. And I'm excited about that. And I feel like, this is an opportunity to have a great week of preparation, great week of practice going into this game at home against the Carolina Panthers to get back on the winning side of things.
There is one other kind of larger point that I'm curious about this week, which goes back to, we're learning week to week about this team. I think that's why people were so kind of can't believe my eyes after the first few weeks, because it was so good. Yeah. And you're like, it's new. It's a rookie quarterback, new staff, new everything, 30 new players. Like, I can't believe this is happening this fast. So this is every week is kind of a new test. And the game that really got me, that turned me into, this isn't going back, like this is a new normal, was actually Arizona. Like, they played in Cincinnati. They had that incredible moment. They won. Everybody saw it. It's on Monday Night Football. The next day, everybody's talking about them. Who are these guys? How good is Jaden Daniels? How great they are. The schedule you played, this is the worst. They play on a short week, have to go to the West Coast and play. Like, that's a loss. Like, it's just set up to be a loss. They go out there and play their best game by far, put their heads down, dominate both sides of the ball. And after that one, I went, all right, we're on to something here. It means they know how to handle wins. It means they know how to handle wins, like early. We're going to find out this week, can they handle a loss? And that's why I'm saying, like, I liked hearing what they had to say. They weren't claiming moral victories. They weren't complaining about whatever outside of what was happening in the game. They weren't doing any of that stuff. And I want to see what happens this weekend when they come back home, because I've seen them handle a win really well. Let me see how they handle a loss now.
Oh, they're going to handle it. They're going to handle it in a proper way, because, again, you talk about tell the truth Monday. The coaches are going to tell the truth to those guys. We didn't play our best football. A lot of you guys didn't play up to your abilities, capabilities, didn't execute the game plan the way we wanted to execute it, didn't carry out your assignments the way they needed to be carried out. And that's just the reality of the situation. That's what happened yesterday. I'm not calling anybody out or anything. That's what happened yesterday. We did not execute and play to the level that we have been grown accustomed to playing. Guys didn't play their best football on a number of different occasions. When you lose a football game, one of the things that happens, there's greater attention to detail. I worry about teams more so, and you mentioned after handling a win. Oftentimes you got to worry about teams more so after a victory, because you may gloss over some issues, some mistakes that didn't necessarily get exposed in that ball game. So, all right, yeah, we'll get that done the next time. But when you lose a football game, the attention to detail ramps up, the focus, all the things, the intensity, the preparation, all the things that you need to do, it's at a heightened level. And so you go into that, you have a great week of practice, and then you go into that ball game ready to play your best.
And here's the reality, like 4 of their first 6 were on the road. They're 4-2. 4 of their first 6 were on the road. They're 4-2. So they're in a really good spot as they kind of turn the corner here, where the schedule becomes very favorable in terms of home games, lack of travel. And that's why I think this week is huge. I want to see how they handle this. And everything I heard last night in the locker room screamed to me, not unlike the win against Cincinnati, the loss here, they're very measured about the whole thing. And I expect a really good performance this weekend, honestly.
And so let's talk about this weekend. We got 3 things kind of going on here. Alumni week. Well, first and foremost, Darrell Green's jersey has been retired at that ball game. One of the Mount Rushmores of our franchise, his jersey is going to be immortalized. Definitely that atmosphere should be great. Alumni weekend. Hundreds of former players who've donned the burgundy and gold, whether you did it when the franchise was the Redskins or Commanders, whatever the case may be. You are a Washington legend. You don the burgundy and gold. Third, we're in the situation. We're still in first place in the NFC East. We need our fans to come out in droves. Don't look at this as oh man, they're playing the lowly Carolina Panthers. We don't need to be there. We need to protect our home field. We want the Carolina Panthers, when they're on offense, on third down, to have to call timeouts because the crowd is so loud, to get false starts, to feel like they are in a hostile environment and they picked the wrong day to show up at Northwest Stadium. We need our fans to come out in droves and feed off that and feed that energy to the players, because it matters. It matters a lot. This is a big game. I would say this is bigger than the game we just played yesterday. Sunday's game against the Carolina Panthers is bigger than the game we just played last weekend, because it's an NFC East game. It's an NFC game and it's a home game. Those wins matter a lot more than an AFC loss, or even if it was an AFC win, a win against an AFC team.
Yeah, I thought the Cleveland crowd was great that showed up a week ago. Like, just think about what the crowd was able to do. The Browns got confused on whether they were going to go for it on a fourth down. Yeah. That's part of the crowd. How many procedural penalties did they have? That's a function of how they're playing right now, but like, it also has to do with the crowd. And it's nice to have the partial crowd. And this team has really turned a corner. And this is a big game this weekend, because unlike the measuring stick or litmus test or whatever you wanted to call last week, Washington's going to be favored this week. There's going to be an expectation that they're going to go in and win. That's why I want to see how they handle this. Carolina has the record that they have. I don't really want to say anything about it because I haven't really watched much of them yet. So it's hard for me to really know what they're really about, but I know what their record is. And so there's going to be a lot of, let's get ready for the Bears in 2 weeks. That's what's going to be the noise, because Caleb's coming on. The Bears are surging. That's the home game after. Be careful here. We need people at the game like they were at that Cleveland game. And honestly, too, I was very fortunate. I got to cover your career a little bit here because I was kind of off the ESPN for a little while you were here. I got to cover the end of Darrell Green's career as a reporter, and that was an honor and a privilege. He played 20 years at corner at an exemplary level. He is one of the most unique players and people you'll ever meet. And I agree with you. If there is a Mount Rushmore of this franchise, he's on it. So this is well deserved. And I'm very excited for Darrell Green's day this coming Sunday.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll say this about the Carolina Panthers. I live here in Charlotte, as I mentioned multiple times. They benched the number 1 overall draft pick from a year ago, Bryce Young, and replaced him with Andy Dalton. Their offense has been better with Dalton at the helm of the quarterback position. They played a lot better football. I think the receivers feel more involved. The offense has just operated more efficiently. Defensively, they were really good defense last year. I don't know that they're playing at the same level that they did a year ago, but they'll be a tough out. They're very well coached. It'll be a game where we got to come to play. They're not going to lay down for us. They're not going to bow down to our burgundy and gold helmet. They're not going to do that. And I'm sure Dan Quinn will have those guys ready to play. I don't worry about our team being ready to play a football game or playing down to the competition or anything like that, being high and low and things like that. I don't worry about that at all.
Everybody's got their own specific motivations every week. I would think that Frankie Louvu is thinking this week, why this team didn't want me back. So I'm waiting to see that energy on the field as he takes on his old team with the way that he's played, with the energy he's played. And, 2 claps and a Ric Flair. I'm ready for it this weekend. Let's go.
I'm laughing because when you mentioned that, Washington was my third franchise. So I played against my former teams. I played against, when I left the Rams, I went to Buffalo. We played against them. And then when I left Buffalo and went to Washington, we played against those teams. I remember when I first left St. Louis and I'm in Buffalo and we're playing a preseason game against the Rams. And this is just to tell you how former players feel about going against their other team. We're playing the Rams, and it happened to be the third preseason game. And this was back when you would play like a half of football back as a starter, getting ready for the regular season. So I'm playing half of the game against the St. Louis Rams. Torrey Holt who was a really good friend of mine, comes to me in pregame warmups, and Torrey and I are great friends. And he's talking, "Hey, Fletch, what's up? What's going on?" And this tell you how I felt about that game. I said, "Torrey," he says, "What's up?" to me. I said, "Torrey, I can't wait to knock your ass out." Bram, I had 10 tackles in one half of football in a preseason game. So to your point, do you think if Frankie Louisville definitely is going to be ready to play against the Carolina Panthers, you can book that?
Jeremy Chinn too.
Oh, Jeremy,
Jeremy Chinn
both
too.
Those guys. Yes.
Yeah. One other thing too, because I would like to end on a very positive note here. So I didn't get to see the Eagles play, so I don't really have anything to say about them at this moment, other than I saw what their coach did, jawing at their own fans who's booing them while they're winning, okay? And then saw his press conference talking about it because they didn't think they beat Cleveland by enough. Then because Dallas played in the 4:00 window, I got to watch a lot of that. They got blown out by the Lions. So of the litmus test that Washington had with the Ravens, Dallas was having one with a front runner in the NFC, and they failed bad at home, got blown out, where the owner's being asked if we're going to change coaches. And then we get to the night game, and the Giants, without a couple of their stars, play a close game but lose. So look, Washington went toe-to-toe with one of the best teams in the NFL on the road in a place where over the last 15, 16 years, second or third best win percentage in the NFL. They were right there with them. The other 3 teams in the NFC East aren't looking too good today. So if you go look up and think about what the road is for the rest of this season, watch what's happening in those other 3 cities right now, and you'll come to the conclusion that everything is very much in front of this team for the rest of this season.
Bram, I try not to. I try not to get too far ahead of myself because of and it's just I get what you're saying. I'm like, man, those teams do look bad. When I was at the airport and I was watching the Cowboys game, I don't know if you got it. You did. You say you did get a chance to watch it.
I saw the majority of it.
Right. So
the Lions were toying with them. They were running hook and ladders with linemen against them.
Right. Yeah. So I watched that game at the airport, and I watched the Sunday night game with the Giants and the Bengals. Yeah. We're in a good spot. we're definitely in a good spot. But let's continue to get better. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's focus on the Carolina Panthers Sunday at Northwest Stadium.
It's going to be a good one. And I'm
be there. We need the fans there. Be there.
I'm with you. It actually is at 4-2 to respond to get to 5-2 at home. It is a bigger game than the Ravens game. It might not be the test that you think it is, but it's a bigger game because this show ain't going to be pretty if they lose on next Monday, honestly, right?
No, you're absolutely right. No, can you imagine the sports talk radio? No, I'm not even going to go there. No, we're going to handle our business. We're going to handle our business, but we definitely need the fans there in droves. Come out with the same type of energy and atmosphere. That was my first home game last week. I missed the Giants home game. So me being at the Cleveland game, I mentioned it I talked about it. You and I talked about it. We may even talked about it on Booth Review last week. The amount of people that were on the sidelines for that game was just, man, unlike that I can remember in a really, really long time. And I played with RG3 his rookie year, and that was crazy during that era. But it was so many people. We're talking 6, 7, 8 rows deep of people on the sideline for a regular season game. We need that type of energy, that type of atmosphere.
It was there. Get on board. This is a different team, and they need you. And this is a big week. You can watch them get to 5-2. It's a big, big week. So we hope we get everybody out there. All right, that'll do it for the booth review. We'll see you next week.